Fast Forward Productions. The women are speaking.
The goal was that everybody wins. The goal is that she looks great. She's carrying the trending bag. It's sophisticated. It gives her white hat moment. If you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. But we obviously wanted to make sure that we were like making sales from this, right? So if she wears something on the show, she was always written about fashion wise. This is what Olivia Pope wore on Scandal this week. This is what Olivia Pope wore on Scandal this week. Hello. Welcome back to the Unfiltered Entrepreneur mini-series called Below 14th Street. I'm your host, Ashley Pollard. Today's episode is fun, you guys, because anytime I share this, I don't think it's a big deal, but people always have a million questions about it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this job that I had and why it was so much fun, and a little bit more about the nuance of kind of like making every decision super thoughtful in a business. I'll just dive in. So when I was working at Prada, I was entry level. Now, I mean, I guess I wasn't entry level. I was, let's say, junior level. What's like above entry? What's interesting is that you had to take an Excel test to get in to work at Prada. You had to know pivots. You had to know macros. You had to know a ton of this stuff, which I knew all of that from my time at Gucci, which was super helpful, but that was wild. Yeah. So you had to take a test to work there. I could talk all day about how weird it was to work at Prada. It's like almost too well-oiled of a machine. But while I was working at Prada, I was a junior level associate. And so I was in sales, I was in wholesale, and I was in the bags team, which is like the best team to work on at Prada because they're known for bags. Obviously, they're known for like really fun, cool apparel, but like they're definitely a handbag brand. So it's fun to work for a handbag-led brand and work in handbags. So the person who I reported into, the senior sales executive, he sold to like the really big players, Bergdorf's, Neiman's, a few other places. And then I sold to some of the more minor shopping experiences like Boyd's, Stanley Korshak. If you're in the industry, you know those. But also, I think I also did Saks. Bergdorf's was just such a big business that he had to manage that. But anyway, my point is that when I was at Prada, I had literally one of the coolest jobs ever. It was so much fun. It was also fun because it was like, okay, well, I'll just tell you. So when I was at Prada, I was personally responsible. I was the only person in the entire world who was personally responsible for choosing the bags that Kerry Washington used in Scandal as Olivia Pope. So there was a deal that Olivia Pope pretty much, not always, but pretty much always wore a Prada bag. And a lot of times it was a white Prada bag. It wasn't always a white Prada bag, but a lot of times it was a white Prada bag. There was some sort of deal. There was some sort of agreement. I don't know really how or why, but that it might have just been a decision on, the Scandal team that she wore Prada. I don't know, but that was the deal, that she wore Prada bags. And so I was the person who selected those. So when I worked at Prada, it was the whole building, which is like very rare in New York because how can you have the whole building? But we were in this like old piano factory all the way out on the West Side Highway where there's like no buildings. And so I think we had like 6 to 8 floors. We even had a cafeteria where you could have lunch for like $5 and it was made by a chef. It was really cool, but it was like a cement building. It was very weird. But one whole floor was samples, dresses, bags, shoes, you name it. Massive sample closet, quote unquote. And so what I would do is I would have to have inventory of what samples we had access to, what samples I wanted access to. And since my job was to decide which bag Little Miss Kerry Washington wore, I had to do some digging. I had to do some research because the goal was that everybody wins. The goal is that she looks great. She's carrying the trending bag. It's sophisticated. It gives her white hat moment. If you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. But we obviously wanted to make sure that we were like making sales from this, right? So if she wears something on the show, she was always written about fashion wise. This is what Olivia Pope wore on Scandal this week. This is what Olivia Pope wore on Scandal this week. And so we wanted to make sure that editors and, publishers and stylists and PR people had access to, and you can buy the bag here. So what I did is I got from ABC a nationwide map of who watches Scandal. And I was also given by them, or maybe someone on the Prada team pulled it, but I had 2 maps. I had like a spending, a median income, household spending map, as well as a map of viewership of Scandal, where basically if I were to overlay them and hold them up to the light, I should be able to see groupings of like, not only do people watch Scandal here, but they spend a lot of money. And sure, people spend a lot of money here, but they don't really watch Scandal. Or wow, a lot of people watch Scandal here, but they don't spend a ton of money. And so what I was basically doing was first cross-referencing who's watching Scandal and who is watching Scandal that has money to spend on a $2,500, $4,000, $10,000 bag. Sometimes $40,000 depending on the bag. It's so weird. See, I just changed myself from saying purse into bag. Like that's such a fashion industry thing. We don't work in purses. We work in handbags. It's so funny. I just like did it like I got in trouble in a meeting or something. So I did that. I took a look at the map. Where are people living that have high median incomes and where are people living who watch Scandal? That was step one. Then I would take a look at who in those neighborhoods, who in those areas sold Prada bags. And Prada was very, very, very selective with their distribution. And if you're a fashion person listening to this, we obviously had department store doors, but we also had like 15 specialty only. And that's very rare for contemporary brands. And if you're like, what are you talking about? Go listen to the overview episode because it'll make more sense. But contemporary brands really rely on specialty stores. They rely on boutiques. They rely on maybe spas. A specialty store is basically not a department store. It could even be a massive store, but it's the only one that exists in the world or in the country or something like that. So specialty is such a big part of the contemporary world where sometimes I would work for contemporary brands like Sam Edelman, and there might be 6,500 specialty stores. Prada, there were 15, sometimes 8, depending on the season, depending on the category. So it's very, very, very consolidated, very clear distribution. So it's very easy for me to take a look and see, okay, so let's say we're talking about Salt Lake City, really high spend, love Scandal. I remember that one specifically. DC, obviously, 2 examples. But let's say we're looking at Salt Lake City. I might notice, okay, so we are not in the Neiman's in Salt Lake City, but we're in the Saks in Salt Lake City. What did Saks purchase? Okay, so Saks purchased these bags, and then DC bought these bags. The Saks and DC have these bags, and the Michigan Avenue in Chicago location has these bags. And so step 2 would be taking a look at all of our distribution around those areas and seeing what inventory they had. So not only am I saying, okay, it's important that where people watch Scandal, they also spend money, but also what is in stock. Because it's also stupid for me to give Olivia Pope, quote unquote, a bag, and then someone walks into the Salt Lake City Saks Fifth Avenue and they can't even buy it because it's not available there. So I would then take a look at the inventory. And let's say DC had a double, is a Prada bag and it came out while she was on Scandal. So she wears the double a lot. It's spelled like double. So the Prada double. So let's say the double was in DC and Salt Lake City, but it wasn't in Michigan Avenue. I would call the Michigan Avenue buyer and say, hey, I'm sending this to Scandal. The episode is going to air sometime in the next 6 months. You're going to want to buy the white Saffiano double because it's one of the bags featured and you didn't purchase it. And they'd be like, great, we'll take 8, 6, 5, something like that. So that was kind of my job. And it might have been as simple. Some people are like, oh my God, so you got to like go and pick out her bag and style it. And it's like, no. It's way more analytical than that. It was making sure that we would make sales in the different areas. And then I got real dorky with it because your girl is a numbers bitch. And so what I started doing, because I watched the show as a viewer, like I was a fan of the show. So what I would do is I would watch the episode and I'd be like, oh my God, that's the bag that I sent to her. Like that's the Saffiano Luxe in Camel that I sent to her. Then the following week, because we would always get selling reports on Mondays, and it would say, like, this is how, like, Saks would send a selling report, Neiman's would send a selling report, Bergdorf's would send a selling report. So I would cross-reference all these selling reports to see if that Saffiano Luxe and Camel had sold anything. And so I'd say, oh my God, it sold like crazy. I'm just going to use this as an example. It sold like crazy in DC, but it didn't really sell in Michigan Avenue. It didn't really sell in Salt Lake City. So I'm curious what I can switch for next time. Let's try white. Let's try color. Let's try a longer drop on the shoulder. Let's try something with less zippers. Let's try something less corporate. Like I would always try to like figure out, like I'd watch a show, see a Prada bag, look at the selling report next week, see what picked up, see what kind of interest there was. Sometimes I'd even call locations and say, did anybody come and ask you about Scandal? And they'd be like, yes, oh my God, we need more of this because of it. So it was so much fun. And it was such a complex job for something that might seem so crystal clear, so simple, so easy to do. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to be, 24, 25, like fucking 11 years ago now, and so young in the fashion industry, so fresh, so new in it. And to be like, so fun. I think I only worked at Prada for 2 years, but I got that about 3 months in. I remember Javier, who was my boss, came to me and he was like, "You are going to love what I'm giving you." And I was like, "Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me." I lived for it. Anyway, that's a fun story about my time in Prada. And now if you guys ever do a Scandal rewatch and you're looking at it, when did I work at Prada? So Prada was after BCBG, which was after, I want to say, Gucci. So that would have been 2011, 2012, 13. So maybe 2014. No. Scandal 2015, whatever season that is. And the year after, I would have chosen all of the Prada bags that you see on her. And thank you very much. Anyway, that is my shenanigans in the fashion industry today. If you are curious about any of my other shenanigans, then feel free to listen to any of the other Below 14th Street episodes, which is kind of a play on how fashion girls are supposed to go out below 14th Street, which was something someone said to me once. And make sure to leave a review. I'm loving the reviews. I'm really trying to get those up so that people see the podcast. They know that they can trust it. They know that you guys are having a good time. We get so many listens on here. So it's really important that in order for me to grow this, that you guys are sending it to your friends and sharing it on stories and tagging me. I always love to see that. So thank you. I'll catch you next time on another episode of The Unfiltered Entrepreneur. Before we go, there's a couple things I want you to remember on these episodes. I'm obviously all about helpful information and telling stories about my life. And part of being a human telling her story means that even though I'm trying my best, my memory may not always be serving me perfectly. Some facts in here might end up being inaccurate or changed or incorrect. You know, if I get a date wrong or a specific place where I was at, just know that I'm doing my best to recall from memory and piecing these stories together from you. There's also some cases where I may have changed a name or something that can refer back to a specific person so that I don't cause controversy with someone or a brand, and make sure that everybody is protected. Doesn't change the point of these stories. They're all still my own, and these are all actual experiences from my life. So the stories themselves are not fabricated. They're just maybe some details that maybe I got wrong from memory, or maybe that I'm trying to cover up so that everybody who listens feels protected and we can laugh and enjoy ourselves. Thank you for listening.